Hello and welcome to Insight, everyone. I'm Nnamdi Odipo. We're still on the issue of food security as national priority in Nigeria, and we will take up the conversation from where we stopped last week. While on the subject, I also plan to examine the issue of home gardening as a complement of our national food security objectives and the many perspectives to the issue. We'd also recall the conversation on IDP's management in Yobe State, seeing how that conversation was interrupted in our last episode. Well, let's sit back and begin.
Whatever the issues are,
the National Assembly is constitutionally empowered to scrutinize,
however complex or intricate.
We have involved all the academia, the members of the academia. We have involved the academies.
Be it government policies or in fact any issue of public concern.
Our job is to help you gain clarity and make sense of it all.
This is not really healthy for our democracy.
There's a lot of aggrievance in terms of who has been in power longest and who becomes the governor of the state.
It's also in the quality of food being consumed.
After all, perception is insight.
And gaining understanding is also getting insight.
Well, now I have the president of Farmers Association of Nigeria, Kabir Ibrahim, back on set with me. Last week, you and I started our conversation on food security as national priority. Let's see, we talked about the imperatives for sustained interventions in key areas of agricultural production. We talked about processing and storage. While we were discussing innovative policy strategies like farmers embracing the science of GM crops, you highlighted the need for channeling communication properly for clarification of misconceptions. More importantly, you talked about budget commitments and government also improving national security architecture to boost farmers' confidence and enable farming communities to return to the farms. I'm sure I've left out a few things there, but for those who missed out last week's episode, please go to our YouTube channel, NTA News, where you can subscribe and watch the previous episode and, of course, other episodes of Insight. Now to the matter at hand. Interestingly, a lot seemed to have happened or changed, since the last time you were in the studio. What are your thoughts on some of the key interventions that the federal government has unveiled towards boosting food supply nationally and bringing down the prices of food in the country? Incidentally, some of the interventions coincide with suggestions that you made here last week in our studio, while, just before the announcement came in. The government says the measures would be implemented over a 180-day period to cover a 150-day duty-free import window for food commodities. It says it will suspension of duties and tariffs and taxes for importation of certain food commodities through land and sea borders. Of course, the targeted commodities include maize, oyster, brown rice, wheat, and cowpeas, all semi-processed, of course. So it will seem like it's a case of from your mouth to the government's ear. I mean, are these measures being rolled out as you would expect, or what do you think about the implementation so far?
Well, I think these are obvious things that we have to do. We have a gap in what the country needs between now and the harvest time. So once the government has said it's for a period and it has specified quantity, that is the global practice. In fact, even the United States at some point imposed some things from some places just to augment what they had in country. So it is not surprising that government is doing that. But the most important thing is to be able to create sufficiency within the country. There are things that should be subsidized so that the farmers will be able to work assiduously, so that you have sustainable food security. Importation may not necessarily give us what we desire. It's a stopgap measure, so that you don't have too many stresses in the food system. It's very good and very welcome that they are doing that, but we must know who is doing the importation. Because if the government is doing the importation, then the matter of tariff and all that does not arise. if people like me are going to be given licenses to import, then we will enjoy those things, tariffs and waivers on taxes and all that. So let us be able to get government to say exactly what quantum will be imported by government directly, which companies are the ones that will be used to import the various items, and what is the time frame. Because since you have pegged it to a 5-month intervention over 50 days, you must be able to know the milestones that will be achieved within defined time frames.
Again, I mean, it's important to point out that some of these commodities being imported will be semi-processed, and then the government also talked about the RRP, that's the recommended regulated recommended pricing.
Well, you know, it's very clear that the rice that will be brought here will be semi-processed. So the mills will not be idle. You know, so many people created mills because of the rice revolution. Sure. So if you bring rice, finished rice, milled rice, they will be idle. But now that you are bringing it in that form, semi-processed, they will now partake in the processing. And then government can say, look, we gave you this at a given price, and we gave you waivers to get it and to mill it. So all the factors of bringing it with high tariff and all that are now away. So it's only the work process and then your profit. And the profit should be marginal and looking at the country in general. So government can now do that regulated price that you mentioned. Regulated recommended price.
As a stopgap measure, of course, that is commendable, like you've said. But you've talked about, and then you've inferred, you know, as to how farmers, millers should be engaged. I'd like your thoughts on, you know, certain aspects of intervention that targets the 2024-2025 farming cycle, you know, and perhaps you speak to the level of collaboration that exists at the moment amongst your organization, AFAN, and government at the federal and state levels.
Well, you see, the government has been gracious enough to make us part of all strata of the program. At the center here, at the national level, I am a member of the National Working Committee, where the minister is the chairman.
Okay.
At the state levels, all our chairmen in the various states, or 36 states and FCT, are members of the State Working Committee. At the local government level, all our local government chairmen, chapter chairmen, are going to be members of each local government working committee. So we are there. And definitely the right farmers will be addressed.
So when government says that it is targeting the farmers, you know, with some of these support initiatives being rolled out. For instance, when government says it will support your members through the dry and wet farming seasons and boost mechanized agriculture to reduce drudgery, lower production cost, and boost production, what are your expectations essentially?
Well, I expect that the real farmers will be reached. But of course, you know, there is a level. That's why I keep saying that the subnationals have to also contribute to that, because the federal government alone does not have the resources to do everything for every farmer. Even in my own state, the governor is making his own effort, helping out the farmers in his own way, and then whatever comes from federal government is a bonus. That is what should happen. In every state, the government should be able to have its own program, and what comes from the federal government is a bonus. Mind you, even on the NAGS AP, the program is to attract 500,000 people in 4 competencies, and they would be supported by giving them inputs for half a hectare. And so you can see now, even if we are 20 million, and the federal government is only trying to reach out to 2 million.
Yes.
You know, there is a far cry from the reality. But then when the states make their own contributions, a larger number of farmers will be reached. And whatever you give the farmer at that level is a bonus, because there is no farmer that will wait for any of these things before they do their own harvest or cultivation. So what it is incentivization.
Yes.
You are incentivizing people to work more. And that's I think the idea, and that's why we support it. We're 100% behind that.
Great. Great. You know, when you say something like the real farmers, like you said earlier on, it's quite, and that's something that is quite popular here. You hear people say, you know, fertilizers are not getting to the real farmers, these incentives are not getting to the real farmers, and one would wonder why this problem, you know, continues to persist. And there's also this opposition that, you know, as against the real farmers, were referencing or talking about the political farmers or something, you know. So there's a class of real farmers and then there's a class of political farmers. How do we overcome this challenge so that these subsidies, these incentives, these fertilizers, I mean, that would help in helping, you know, to grow agricultural production, you know, can really get to these real farmers that we're talking about?
Well, there is a mechanism that you can use. You know, AFAN itself is apolitical. We are not supposed to be in politics. But as individuals, we can join politics. But as a body, we are not in politics. So when anything is given with us, you know, in the committee, we will ensure that it goes to the real farmer. The real farmer is someone whose farm is well known. Okay. The coordinates of the farm are known.
Okay.
The commodity that he or she produces are known.
Okay.
So you cannot give somebody who just says that I have a farm and I do this. No, you are giving a farmer who is doing it real time. You are going to the farm. That is why I said we have no objection that the state governments are involved. The federal directors in the states are involved because they are dealing with these farmers and they can easily, if a person says, for instance, that he is doing agricultural production in rice in Safana local government in Katsina State, you go to the Safana local government committee where our members are, and then you can easily know where the man is from, where his farm is, and then you can give him that facility. And this is work in progress. If it doesn't succeed this year, it will succeed the following year. And once you do it that way, it's okay. But I will give you one simple example. In 2015, I was in charge of distributing fertilizers to Katsina State farmers. And what I said was, look, use this template. It was a very simple template. I said, give the support at polling station level. If the polling unit level or polling station level has about 500 people, and it's in the neighborhood where everybody knows everybody else. So if you say you are a farmer, everybody will know whether you are a farmer or not. So that distribution will only go to farmers.
And it worked? And
it worked, yes. In 2015 in Katsina State, when Masari first took office, I was the one in charge of it, and we distributed that. But it was not enough because we had 23,000 metric tons to give to over 3 million farmers. So no farmer got a real one bag.
That's regrettable.
But you cannot do that. That's why I said government intervention is only a bonus. It cannot be the main thing. The farmer chose to be a farmer by himself. Subsidies on farm inputs will be the most important thing. That if you can buy fertilizer like Coca-Cola anywhere in Nigeria and at a very affordable price, that is what government should do. That is what happens in the United States. Nobody takes fertilizers or anything to give to farmers. Rather, you get a subsidy from buying. When you go to buy these items, they are subsidized. And in the Netherlands, that's what happens.
And other major farming inputs.
Yes, any farming inputs, mechanization and all that are easily accessible and affordable. And therefore, you can have sustainable food security or food sufficiency.
Great. Last week when you were here, I talked about an issue I wanted to take you up on, especially when you raised the issue of climate change and how it's impacting production. So, I mean, farmers in several parts of the country, in some states, are already reeling from heavy rains, and, you know, with the warning of more rains and projected floods on the way, I figure there are bound to be concerns. Sorry, do we need to get you water, perhaps?
No, I'm okay.
So I guess, or I figure there are bound to be concerns on, you know, the adverse effects, you know, of that on national food production. I know government is trying to engage more youth and women in greenhouse cultivation of horticultural crops like tomatoes and pepper, but will that cut it? And I mean this in terms of, you know, the projected impacts of flooding in several farming communities across flood-prone states in the country. What reactionary, or rather proactive measures should have been in place in the first place, you know, But at this point that we are, what mitigative actions would you recommend, to take? Or is it too late in time for this year's farming season, Osaku?
No, you know that the NIMET predictions came in February, and we were there at when they unveiled it. All these things that are happening, we were told they would happen. And so we went to town to inform our farmers to avoid planting in flood-prone areas, to also remove whatever clogs, drainages around their farms and even around their homes and around everywhere else in the cities and in the villages, so that flooding will be mitigated. Flooding happens when, water has to find its level, whatever you do. So if the drainage
If that's the case, why did we seem to have the issues with tomato and pepper, just in the recent past when the report was that...
No.
Yes.
Tomato, maybe you have a misunderstanding. At the heat of rainy season, flooding or not flooding, the level of water is not such that you can plant tomato in open fields.
So it wasn't...
every crop has its desirability of moisture.
Yes.
You say take rice, for instance. You cannot plant rice where there is no much moisture. There is a variety that you need even flooding. It will only do better when the place is flooded. Flooded means regulated flooding, not flooding that will sweep. And there is another variety that even comes up after being flooded through natural causes, not controlled. Now, so what I said about tomato and pepper is, generally speaking, when you plant these items, they require a marginal level of moisture. In fact, they are what you call here as what you produce when the when the weather becomes cold. Just like wheat in some instances. So that's why you do better production of tomato and pepper and all that during the dry season. So now during this period,
yes,
and it has happened since I have known what I was doing, that between May and September or October, there is always a shortfall of these items because we are not cultivating them. They become like other crops that since we are doing rain-fed agriculture.
Since we've always known this, or you have always known this, we have always known this, are you now saying that is it? There is no way to go?
No. The way,
because I would expect that maybe greenhouse...
Yes. No, let me tell you, the way to go, and I said it here, unless you want me to repeat it, there is a technology that you deploy to minimize or regulate the level of moisture in the soil, and that is going or adopting greenhouse. When you plant in greenhouse or confined areas where you mitigate or you reduce the level of water,
yes,
you can do it. So what it means is that you encourage this kind of productivity, and that is why we said you should even adopt climate smart production in every aspect. In other countries, you get, now you are complaining about tomato, and when I came
because
here,
because I like tomato a lot.
When I came here, I even told you that I had just come from a program in Kenya, and I was being given grilled tomato during breakfast. Now, if you go to buy suya anywhere in Abuja, the most they will do is to give you onions.
Yes,
because
they don't give you tomato
they don't
anymore.
give you tomato because tomato is expensive and scarce.
True.
So try to look at it from the perspective of a Nigerian. It's not something that.
No, but I think we should explore the option you're talking about on greenhouse cultivation of some of these crops, these horticultural crops. But very quickly, because I understand we're totally out of time, and this will be my last question to you. We are beginning to see some sort of local price control interventions at community levels, with traditional institutions in some communities. And I'll give you an example. In Ife land, for instance, we're seeing that play out. They are coming in seeking to curtail the SSEs of unions, market unions, middlemen and food orders, whose activities, they say contribute to artificial scarcity and also, impact prices, hiking food prices. How far can that take us, really? And how holistic should food commodity price control be at this point in Nigeria with, all of the going-ons with market food prices, and considering the fact, let's not forget that we also operate a free and open market system?
Well, you see, we are caught between the devil and the blue sea. Now, you see, you cannot blame farmers for hiking prices, but the middlemen. And middlemen are those people who go to buy at the farm gate at a very low price, but they bring it to the place of need by putting all of the logistics and then putting profit. But there are some farmers, which is even allowed in all the religions, that when you produce something, you sell what you have to sell, you store what you have to store to use. But some farmers also store excess so that when the prices go up, they sell. But there are mechanisms now, even now,
Okay.
I know in Kaduna State, there's somebody who is doing, who has a model, he calls it Babagona. What they do is that they help farmers to produce, let's say, maize. When they produce, they give them prices at harvest and then take it, store it, or sell it to breweries or things like that, and they get a good margin. And from that big margin, they also give the farmer a part of it. That is, the farmer has a stake
Yes.
in what? Equity in that. That helps people. This is the thing that happens in developed worlds. I know in the United States, in Germantown, what they do is, if you have large animals and you produce milk, the tanker will go to where you produce and take milk. You'll be paid the money of the milk in its raw form, and when one value is added to it, you also have a percentage in the value addition. That way, everybody is happy. Industry is happy, the farmer is happy, and the consumer is also happy. And that is what should happen in Nigeria.
This would be a good place to end our conversation. President of Farmers Association of Nigeria, Kabir Ibrahim, I would like to thank you so much for 2 weeks of insightful analysis on this issue. I mean, this whole conversation of boosting food security, and there are still issues. I should say that I wanted us to talk about. One key issue is about these GM drugs. Sorry, did I say drugs? GM foods. I beg your pardon. And I wanted to take you up on, this perception by farmers on GM seeds and not being able to cultivate from fruit or extract seeds for replanting from GM foods or crops that they harvest from their farms.
If you
maybe we'll take that up next time, another time, because we're completely out of time. But of course, like I said, we'll be monitoring the situation to see how farmers in Nigeria are keen into some of the measures being rolled out by the federal and state government to boost food production or food, to end this current hike in food prices or rising food prices and increase, food security in Nigeria. I'd like to thank you so much for being part of our program. It's been a pleasure having you here for these 2 weeks. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you very much, Namdi, for having me.